Hello, and welcome to Ben Readin. Due to a cosmic coincidence millions of the years in the making, two Bens work at the same small coastal library. We want to thank you for tuning in to this literary extravaganza. Hello! So it's come to our attention that some of you may want to read along with us as to what we're reading next, and the next installment of Ben Reading is actually going to be a split. It was a tie on what you wanted us to read between The Kept and The Sisters Brothers, and I will be reading The Kept by James Scott, which is seems like a revenge novel set in 1897 in the winter in upstate New York. A mother comes home and finds her family slaughtered, except for one of her sons, and they track down the killers. And Ben, you're going to be doing The Sister Brothers.
I'm going to be reading The Sisters Brothers by Patrick DeWitt, and it's sort of a revisionist Western, it's got some absurd elements, and it's about two brothers who are tasked to track down a prospector.
Are they named Sister?
Their last name is Sisters.
Sister.
Yeah.
Nice. Very boy named Sue.
Yeah.
It's a comedy, right?
Yeah. It sounds like it's supposed to be kind of a comedy.
Okay.
And, I am looking forward to reading it. I've heard a lot of good things about it.
Westerns. It's a good time to be reading about Westerns.
Yeah.
And as always, you can follow along with us by going to the Rockport Public Library's webpage in Rockport, Maine, and not Rockport, Massachusetts. And you can find the Ben Reading webpage. And you can email us at benthelibrarian@gmail.com. And so now, without further ado, we're going to talk about the book we read.
Which is London Falling by Paul Cornell. This book is about four cops in London. They usually just go by their last names, which is Quill, Ross, Costain, and Sefton.
Yeah, and Ross is not a real cop, right? She is a police analyst, so she doesn't get to do all the crazy stuff the other ones do, but she deals with data.
Yes.
She's into the numbers.
Yes, and they're all sort of, well, we'll get into that a little bit with the numbers and the kind of procedural aspect of this. So this book is about those four cops who, through an accident, acquire the site.
The site.
And this allows them to kind of see London as it really is.
The scary.
Which is a place filled with scary entities.
Yeah.
Creatures.
Remembered histories,
Yeah.
So mythology sort of comes to life by collective memory.
Yeah, and so these cops have to solve they're trying to find a serial killer.
Yeah, it starts a little bit. They're all working on a case, an undercover case, by this crime boss.
Yeah,
and nobody knows how this crime boss got so big and good.
Yeah,
and they sort of track down some things. This accident happens.
Yep.
And they notice that it's a serial killer.
Yep.
That they think has been working like a crazy, awesome serial killer. And it turns out that it's a witch.
Yes. A witch. Her name is Maura Losley. And she's been around for a long time.
Yep.
And she's been kind of using London, just like London as a whole, as kind of how she gets her power.
It's the magic system in this is really interesting. And so I want to talk a little bit before we get more into the plot about the book itself, the structure of this book and sort of how we responded to it. I did not like the first 50 pages of this book.
Me neither.
It drops you into a sort of chaotic situation. You don't really know what's going on, and it is written in English, but this was published in London, in Britain. And so the language and the word usage is a little different at first. It takes a little getting used to. Mm-hmm. And it's a police procedural. So a lot of what they're talking about is really nuts and bolts cop stuff. but all the lingo's different. Instead of, like detectives, they're DCIs, or the Nick is the jailhouse or something. It's very interesting that way. There was a glossary in the back of my book, and I actually had to use it.
Yep, mine too. And what's sort of interesting about that procedural aspect of it is that these four policemen, they get this sight. They can see things that other people can't, but it doesn't really grant them any other sort of special ability.
They're have no idea what they're doing.
They have no idea what they're doing, and they're almost like more helpless now because of it.
Yeah.
So they have to really rely on, putting everything on a board and tying things together with red yarn. And it's a real, and actually that stuff was really interesting.
Yeah. The conceptual working out of how to do this.
Yep.
And how it tied in with their operational board and their operational procedures was very interesting, because they use their police procedures and their police training in conjunction with this site, this being able to track evil sort of entities and figuring out, I don't know, the scary stuff.
Yeah.
And nobody else can help them, because they're the only people that can do this, that are on the police force, and they're in their own little separate. It's great. It's great. Yeah. And go ahead.
Oh, and not to make this sound like it's just a book about, cops staring at a board, because it's not. There's actually a lot of really good action in this book. And when it happens, we were talking earlier about how we didn't like the first 50 or so pages. Yeah. And I know for me, it was because some things just seemed unclear. It was confusing to see, to know who was who sometimes. But once the action starts, the writing becomes much clearer and much more cinematic in places. There's some great action sequences.
Yes.
There's an awesome foot chase between the four cops and the witch, and
it's outstanding.
It's really good.
It's outstanding. And so we're not giving a lot away about this book. There are many instances where you discover things, and the twists and turns are really great, because
they're great.
Part of the book is that you're discovering these things along with the main characters. But there is a device that the author uses, the West Ham soccer team, and the whole serial killer aspect of this is linked to soccer.
Yes.
And it really ramps up the tension with the soccer games are interspersed with...
the announcers.
Yeah, the announcers jump in. There are time limits, because things are based on when these games are going to be played, and what's going to happen during the game really will have an outcome in the investigation.
Yep.
It's really, really interesting. What the books are a bit like the TV show Homicide or Law and Order, but with magic.
Yep. And Ben, is there a talking cat in this book?
Oh, there's a talking cat in this book. Yep. There is a wonderful talking cat scene in this book.
Oh. It's very good.
Yeah, it's very good, and it's not light. It's not dark and graphic and gross, but it's a little gritty.
There's definitely some things that are, you're glad that Paul Cornell did not go into too much detail.
Yes, you are. And speaking of Paul Cornell, I want to get this in here. Paul Cornell's claim to fame, other than being a fabulous writer, this book was great, I plan on reading the next one. He is also, if not the only, one of the only people who has ever been nominated for a Hugo Award in 3 separate categories. 1 for novels, 2 for his work on graphic novels. I'm not sure what the Hugo was for, but he's done a lot of work with Wolverine. Mm-hmm. And 3 as a writer for Doctor Who, the new Doctor Who episodes, the reboot, I guess, for the 2000s. He's written a few episodes of that have been really good.
Yeah.
So... good on you, Paul. Like, well done, sir. Well done.
And if you listen to this and you think, I'm going to read London Falling, and then you do, and you want to read the next one, the second book is called The Severed Streets.
And they set it up really well.
Yes, it's set up very well. I'm very interested to see what happens next.
Yeah, there are the bad guys in this book. The bad guy, the smiling man.
Yes.
Oh, the smiling man. He's everywhere.
I'm interested to see what happens with him.
Yeah, well, and we want to thank you for once again listening to our voices speak to you about books. We hope you enjoyed it.